So I find the longer I am in recovery, well, actually, the longer I've been following Christ, the more stuff gets added to my testimony. So I'm not gonna share like the whole thing, but like I'd like to just kind of share how I came to God and kind of how He drew me in, and just kind of my experience with Him a little bit since then. I'm just gonna set a timer. Okay. All right. So yeah, I've been pretty much agnostic my whole life. If it couldn't be proven or disproven, then I didn't believe or disbelieve in it, and that pretty much encompassed all spiritual things. So I never had a belief in God or spirits or angels or demons or any of that stuff. But then I had this first obvious spiritual experience. It was the end of my addiction. And my grandfather had passed away, and then that night, when I went to bed, I don't know if anyone knows what sleep paralysis is. It's basically I was asleep, but I wasn't asleep, and I'm just awake the whole night in my bed, but paralyzed. And my grandfather was standing beside my bed, and he was melting and decomposing, and yelling like a demon to me all night. And then I woke up, and there was a voice in my head, and there was children screaming outside the window and this voice telling me what to do and all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that was very demonic. And that lasted about 5 years. It was 24/7 for 5 years. Medications never did anything for it. That was my first real, obvious spiritual experience. And I didn't recognize it as that at first. And at that point, I was pretty suicidal. And long story short, I thought I found a loophole because I didn't want to kill myself. And there's reasons, I'm not going to get into it. But I thought I found a loophole. I'm hey, I can join the army and then, go off to war, blow some people up and, get myself killed in the process. The goal was to get myself killed in the process. But I had this psychosis, so I was 24/7. So I had, a moment of clarity. The army is never going to accept me in this state. So I decided to go to rehab instead. And 4 months in rehab, I figured out I didn't want to join the army, that every time I drink and use drugs, it's like I'm possessed. And so I decided to try recovery. And the 2 first years of recovery were complete hell. The first year, I couldn't stop drinking for more than 2 days. And the second year was even worse. I ended up getting a year sober the second year. And just to explain it real quickly, that's when I discovered I suffered from bipolar and schizophrenia, and it was very severe. And so, but that led me to praying for the first time in my life. Because, I've done prayers in Catholic school. It's not really praying, it's just saying words people tell me to say. So, but that second year of hell, actually got me praying for the first time. And how I survived that year is a miracle. I don't even know how I didn't take my life. But God had given me a spark that wanted life at that point. I didn't recognize it as such at the time, but looking back, I was very suicidal. All I wanted was to kill myself, but there was just something in me that decided to seek life and recovery instead. And so I did, this was my second spiritual experience. I did 2 prayers. One prayer, so my new/old addiction, my main focus addiction now was video games. I couldn't stop playing video games. I played from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed, and I couldn't sleep unless I was awake a minimum of 38 hours. So the first prayer, I prayed to whatever was listening. I didn't know what I was praying to. I just said words in desperation, and I asked for the obsession of video games to be removed. And then, a few mornings later, I woke up, I played for an hour, and I was done. I didn't need to play for the rest of the day. And so, which leads me to my second prayer. I discovered this metal song where the guy is screaming in the mic, and he's just screaming this is his darkest days. The voices in his head are telling him it's too late for him. And then he just starts praying and begging God to see one more day. And so that was my second prayer. Just every day I'd start begging God, just let me see one more day. And then I reached out. I was part of a program at the Royal Ottawa that I left, and they should have taken my name off, and there would have been no way for me to get back into the program. But I called them, and they saw I was desperate, and even though it's been 2 years, they didn't take my name off, so they reaccepted me, which started the next season of my recovery. So the next season, it's pretty easy to summarize, it lasted about 5 years, and I started working the program, like doing steps and stuff like that. But the problem is I stopped pursuing God. I stopped praying. I started doing all these things in my own power. And it was basically 5 years of constant depression, often suicidal. And I would often relapse because drinking was my form of suicide. So I'd want to die and I didn't have a hope. So I go back to drinking. And then after 5 years of this, I realized that I was missing something. So I got desperate enough again. And I decided that I wanted to find like what answered my prayers all those years previously. And so I started seeking God for the first time in my life. And, I started in a pagan world, which is my third obvious spiritual experience, where I would go to festivals and rituals. I took part in witchcraft and did all this kind of stuff. But when I was walking into this environment, this pagan environment, I felt a power there. I had never felt something unseen, that undeniable before. And so that helped me be less agnostic. I started believing more in spirits and things that I can't see, that I never believed in before. And it felt, the spirits there, it's very deceiving and cunning. It felt wonderful. It's like all the good things of mania I was feeling in these environments. But even there, God was protecting me. I just had this voice in my head that just kept repeating, I don't belong there, I don't belong there, I don't belong there. And I wasn't listening to it at first because it felt amazing being there. But then I took some time to reflect on it eventually. And I realized whatever presence I was feeling there that was making me feel good. It was trying to dominate and manipulate me and make me into its own image. And I just got scared. I got terrified. Because I started reflecting on who I was on these things. And yes, it felt amazing, but I didn't like who I was. I was turning into somebody else that it just wasn't, it wasn't good. And so I got scared and stopped pursuing God for about a year, 6 months. I don't know the exact time frame. But then I had this other friend who decided to facilitate a Bible study. So I decided to, check it out and see what would happen. And which led me to my fourth obvious spiritual experience. I walked into that room. I walked into that room, and again, I was faced with this presence, with this undeniable power, but it wasn't like the pagan world. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't trying to dominate. The only way I can explain it is undeniable love. And it was just welcoming me home exactly as I was. It took me, this fractured excuse of a man, exactly as I was, and just said, welcome home. He didn't try to change me, didn't try to dominate me, didn't try to manipulate me. It just gave me love. And so at this point, I believed in God. I believed in Satan and angels and demons and Holy Spirits, but I just couldn't believe in Jesus. And that was the one missing piece. But I wanted to with all my heart. I found home, and now I just had to walk through. And so it took about 6 months, but I was relentlessly pursuing to believe in Jesus because I just wanted to believe in him so badly. And then one day someone asked me if I believed, and I realized I do. It's just God gave me the faith one day, and I just it's nothing I did or anyone else did. I just thought about it, and I'm oh my God, I believe in Jesus. And I got baptized that day in some guy's bathtub. And since then, so I had a few months of relief from the depression, and I just started learning to be with God, learning to grow that relationship. Started getting into the Word and reading the Bible every day, and learning to pray. And I had new friends I could talk to that helped guide me. And but then after a few months, the depression came back pretty hard, and it was at least as bad as it was before, and it lasted quite a while. And I got to a point where I started praying for its removal every day, God, please remove this depression. And he did, and things got much worse. And that's when I discovered that depression wasn't the problem. That was just my soul's best attempt at coping with trauma and pain. And so without the depression, I had nothing to cope with the agony I had inside. And so I started distracting like crazy. I found myself sitting outside of the LCBO, like I'm going in, but I just start begging God, like asking him, like, if you don't do something, I will be drinking. And I don't want to drink, but like I'm going to be drinking because I have no other solution. And he actually would give me a couple days off from the pain and the depression. It would just all be lifted for a day or two, and I'd be able to go back home and not pick up any alcohol. And then that kept repeating. And after a while, God finally broke through my madness and me just distracting like crazy and told me, like, me distracting is actually adding to this pain I'm feeling. Because this pain has to do with me suppressing emotion since I was 12. Let's say like a long time, 20 years, something like that. So it's, this pain is actually suppressed stuff it's undealt with. And so by distracting, I'm actually adding more on top of it. And so I decided to take an hour a day to just put on some worship music, sit somewhere in my car outside alone, and just read the Bible, and then just sit and feel the pain and just sit right in it. And then God started returning memories one by one, nothing overwhelming, very lovingly in an easy way. And then as the memories came, I started praying forgiveness. I started praying repentance, whatever was needed. And I just started letting go and giving him all these events and my brokenness and my wounds and hurts. And I actually started getting healing from that. That was like a 2-week process. And as I was doing that, the pain got less and less and less and less. And eventually it just like went away, and I was good for a while, and I had some moments of relief. And that was the first big breakthrough I ever had with depression. It was the first time I actually started letting go rather than holding on to this stuff that isn't from God. And there has been many depressions since then. That was like 5 years ago, let's say. I'm bad with time, but about 5 years. And so there has been many depressions I faced since then, and God would guide me through them, each the same way. And I got like a bunch of healing through different causes, through different wounds that would cause depression in me. And then about 3 years ago, it was a 2-year depression hit. And that was one of the more intense depressions I've been in. Like I faced it the same way I did all the other ones. And I found God wasn't speaking. He wasn't moving. Like I couldn't sense him. I was as lost or even more lost than I was before I met him. And like I just started taking matters into my own hand. I started looking at diet, at like different medications, and just different things like ice baths, sun therapy, like just looking at like just doing all this stuff to try to make it better. But no matter what I would do, it just kept getting worse. And so like about like a year and a half, there's no way I can tell you the exact timeline, but quite a while in, like my only hope was death. But God had healed me enough that even though at this point, even though the only way out I could see was to kill myself or get myself killed, I didn't even come close to thinking of drinking. Like I wasn't sitting outside the LCBO. It wasn't even a temptation. Like he completely healed that part of me. And that's when I realized like my addiction's behind me. I will never drink and use again. I just have to keep seeking God and be in relationship with him. And so around that moment where I lost all hope, God acknowledged that I know how to fight and be a warrior and to be his warrior, but he also started calling me his beloved child that he is well pleased with. He called me his child, and then I realized I don't know how to be a kid. I don't know how to receive his love. Yes, I can fight for him, but he wants me to be his child. And so, with no hope in sight, I just completely gave up. I told God, like I asked God, sorry, I try not to tell God things. I don't. I asked God, I'm like, God, like take this, like please do something or just kill me, because like I can't keep living this way. And And I just like laid down, like just ready to die. And I stopped striving. I stopped seeking healing. I stopped praying for healing. And I stopped asking him for things. Like I just didn't want anything anymore. He wasn't giving me anything anyway. So I'm like, this asking is pointless. Like I don't want anything at this point. But I discovered that like I still want him. I still dearly wanted him. He was now all I wanted. And so I started seeking his presence over his voice. And then I found him. Like it's a lot to explain, so I won't get into it, but like the pain, like it's just overwhelming and it was in my gut. And then I started paying attention and started seeking God. And I found him like right in the pain, just around it, waiting for me to pay attention to him and like be in the pain with him. It was very similar to the other breakthroughs I had with him where I'd sit in the pain and turn it over to him. But that's the first time I experienced him in the pain, in the trauma, in the wounds, just waiting for me to be with him in there. And that started the journey of learning to be his child. And it's hard to explain. Like I said, I gave up, but it's not really giving up. Like I kept living my life. He kept enabling me to be functional to an extent, but like I stopped striving. Like I stopped. I don't really know how else to say it. And I just started learning to be his child. And I started experiencing God like I never knew was even possible. I went through like this month where it was like near perfect unity with him. I was still suicidal. I still wanted to die, but I was perfectly content and had perfect peace while just like lying down in bed and doing absolutely nothing for like an hour or two. Like I was just sitting there or lying there with God. And I realized like God actually enabled me. Like I know in my head, God is all I need. But living that out can be challenging because there's a lot of worries and fears and wounds that press in. But during that month, he allowed me to live that. I had nothing but God. And I was like, I didn't, like it was perfect. Like, it's just this amazing unity that I had with him. And then he also brought me through a couple weeks of just this intense love. Like I was just so in love with God and I just felt so loved by him that during those 2 weeks, I just the thought of him, I burst out crying. And like it was multiple times a day, every day for 2 weeks. And it was just like, I've never experienced love like that before. And he started teaching me that like my well-being isn't my responsibility. As a child, my well-being is my father's responsibility. And so it's still something I'm working out. I do believe at times I do need to fight and be a warrior, but he is my father and I am the child. And so ultimately my well-being is his responsibility. And like through it all, he kept giving me pieces of who he says I am. Like I discovered more and more of who God was, and I started discovering more and more of who I was through that tribulation also. And then one day it was just like gone. Like about 6 months in or whatever, just learned to be his child. Like I wasn't depressed anymore. And yeah. And so, okay. So this next part, I'm just going to be reading this because the last year has been interesting. So it'll make sense once I start reading. Like I don't have the ability to say it all by memory right now. But yeah, so that depression lifted about a year ago, and I haven't been in one since. He's delivered me from depression. This has caused everything that the depression was burying and helping me cope with to come to the surface. And the last year has been incredibly painful and hard and complicated and nonstop intensity. Every time I think I figured something out, and each time I think I figured out what I'm doing, I learned that I know nothing and I don't really know what I'm doing at all. And I've been in a disassociation for most of it, which is just a disconnection from myself and reality. It's basically like I'm living a waking dream. So I've been disassociating for most of it, and I don't know what time it is or what day it is. I can barely keep track of anything. I can barely think and discern and retain and process. Like it's just been a mess. I've been so disconnected from myself and reality that's like I'm living a waking dream. And I also am being faced with trauma that I didn't even know I experienced that is at the root of this dream state. That through that event, I lost a piece of myself to protect it. And I can finally feel that peace, that missing piece. He's within but separate. And I dearly want him back. But who am I to ask a part of me that is free of trauma to reunite with me, with all the pain and torment and wounds that I still have in me? He is safe there and wouldn't be safe here. This is a new revelation, and I obviously still have to work through it. So, and it's also been like incredibly wonderful. God has returned to me my heart. I'm an emotional person, but I suppressed it all at 12 years old. And then at 12 years in recovery, God started returning them to me. I've also felt deeper healing that I never even knew was possible, receiving literal deliverance in my time with God from different spirits. And I'm being brought more and more into who God has called me to be. I've received more of who he says I am and let go of more of my old identity. The depression was also burying all the beautiful things, the love, the joy, the happiness. I went through a week where I believed I was manic, but then someone suggested that I just seemed happy, and I realized they were right. I hadn't felt happiness in about 25 years. I had nothing to relate it to other than mania. That happiness has come and gone since then, but I praise God that I know it's something that's possible for me. Yes, I felt sad since then. I felt some despair, a touch of hopelessness, a new type of desperation. I've wailed in grief and felt lost and broken and worthless and so alone, but depression hasn't touched me. That part of my life is over, and all of the great and terrible things since then have all been amazing. I'm still a work in progress, and it still seems like there's a long way to go, but there's no going back. God is my Father, and I am his child.